Let's look at the teleological argument for God's existence. For God's existence, in favor of the idea that God exists. So we've got the teleological, telos. Telos is Greek, and it means purpose, like the thing that it's for, an end goal, its function. Like, what's the function of this pen? It's to write. Maybe you say like draw, but it's got ink, and so it's to leave a marking of some kind. What's the purpose of this thingy? It's to hold up my super cool pen. What's the purpose of my eye? It's to visually perceive, right? So like things have purposes. And the teleological argument is going to appeal to that idea that certain things have certain purposes. The teleological argument for the existence of God, like the cosmological argument for the existence of God, like the ontological argument for the existence of God, is trying to convince you that God exists. And so if you believe in God, it's trying to support your belief to make it seem rational to believe in God. Arguments in favor of the belief in God, or arguments in favor of God's existence, appeal to reasons. So the teleological argument for the existence of God is not saying believe in God or I'll kill you. It's not saying believe in God because your mother believes in God. It's saying, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons that are independent of God's existence that support God's existence, and that's why you should believe in God. Here's one such argument with two premises, meaning two reasons that lead to the conclusion. The conclusion is God exists. Premise one, some things in nature are complex and design-like. Premise two, there must be an intelligent designer who could be the explanation for the designed. Conclusion, so there must be an intelligent designer. In other words, premise one is saying that if you look around in nature, you'll see things that are really complicated. And premise two is basically saying these really complicated things are no accident. They must have been made that way. And the conclusion is, well, then there's a maker. If somebody made this pen, then there's a maker of the pen, right? So if somebody made the earth, then there is an earth maker, and then we're going to call that God. That kind of argument uses a ton of examples to support itself. It's a really good argument, like just thinking about water. Water, which you might think of as like super, super simple. It's on the periodic table of elements. It is complicated though. The way water works, what water is, how water is even possible. It could be a liquid, a solid, and a gas in the same room at the same time. Like water that you drink, water like ice, water like humidity in the air. Super complicated. If you study water, it's no joke. And water is just one element, a natural like thing. But if you look at other things that are way more complicated than just a molecule, is it a molecule? I'm not a scientist. Okay. If you look at ducks, for example, they sit in freezing cold water when it's freezing cold outside, and they're not cold, and they don't freeze to death. And why is that? Why is that you will get hypothermia and potentially die within minutes if you went into freezing cold water and freezing cold temperatures, but the duck is like made to live that way. Oh, well, actually, the duck has these special feathers, and the duck's not actually getting wet. Oh, but the duck feet get wet. Oh, yes, but the duck's feet sends heat down from its body, but doesn't collect the cold from the water. Like, what? A hippopotamus lives outdoors, and it's got like 1,000 pounds of skin, and it never gets sunburned. How is that possible? Well, it turns out that the skin excretes this thing, and it's like blood, sweat, and it just doesn't okay, whoa. There are a ton of examples looking at elements, looking at animals, looking at the environment, looking at ecosystems, where things just seem to work perfectly. And the idea that William Paley gives us when he gives us the teleological argument is that when you look around, obviously these things were designed. These things are no accident. And if they were designed, there must be a designer. Call that designer God, and you've proven that God must exist. Without the existence of God, we can't explain how super cool science is. And if you're wondering where science came from, God created the laws of physics and nature and science, etc. So God becomes our explanation for how cool life is.